The pain she couldn't hide. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Wellington mansion, casting warm golden patterns across the marble floors where 7-year-old Emma sat with her coloring book. She had been trying for 20 minutes to stay within the lines of a butterfly drawing, but her right hand kept cramping, making the purple crayon slip and wobble across the page in shaky, uneven strokes. Emma pressed her lips together in the way she did when she was concentrating very hard, determined not to let the growing ache in her hand stop her from finishing her artwork. She had always been proud of her coloring, neat, careful work that earned praise from her teachers and made her father smile when he came home from his long days at Wellington Technologies. But lately, the simple joy of creating something beautiful had become a struggle. The pain had started small, just a tiny ache that came and went like a whisper. Emma had learned to ignore whispers. In a house as big as theirs, with staff members who spoke in hushed tones and a father who was always buried in important phone calls, whispers were easy to dismiss. Marcus Wellington was in his home office 3 rooms away, reviewing quarterly reports that would determine the fate of several major business deals. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, Marcus carried the weight of hundreds of employees' livelihoods on his shoulders. At 38, he had built an empire through 18-hour workdays and unwavering focus. But success had come at a cost that he was only beginning to understand. Since his wife Amanda's death in a car accident 3 years earlier, Marcus had thrown himself even deeper into his work, using business achievements to fill the hollow spaces that grief had carved in his life. Emma had been cared for by a series of nannies and housekeepers, each one competent and kind, but none of them quite able to bridge the growing distance between father and daughter. Emma looked down at her hand, flexing her small fingers and trying to make the cramping stop. The pain had been getting worse over the past few weeks, sometimes making it hard to hold her pencil at school, sometimes waking her up in the middle of the night with sharp, shooting sensations that brought tears to her eyes. She had mentioned it once to Mrs. Patterson, the current housekeeper, but Mrs. Patterson had been busy preparing dinner for a business meeting Marcus was hosting, and she had absently suggested that Emma might have slept on her hand wrong. Emma had nodded and changed the subject, not wanting to be a bother. "Miss Emma?" Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, her kind face creased with concern. "Your father is still in his meeting, but lunch is ready. Would you like me to set up a place for you in the sunroom?" Emma nodded, carefully setting down the purple crayon and gathering her coloring supplies. As she stood up, a sharp pain shot through her right hand and up her arm, making her gasp and drop the entire box of crayons. They scattered across the marble floor in a rainbow of broken pieces. "Oh, no," Emma whispered, immediately dropping to her knees to gather them up. But as she reached for a red crayon, the pain flared again, so intense that she couldn't help the small cry that escaped her lips. Mrs. Patterson was beside her in an instant. "Emma, sweetheart, what's wrong?" "My hand hurts so much," Emma said, the words tumbling out in a rush now that someone was finally asking, finally listening. "It hurts all the time now, and it wakes me up at night. And I can't hold my pencil right, and I dropped my crayon box because it hurts so bad." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now, not just from the pain, but from the relief of finally being able to tell someone how scared she had been, how the constant ache had been growing bigger and scarier with each passing day. Mrs. Patterson helped Emma to her feet, studying the child's pale face with growing alarm. "How long has this been going on, honey?" Maybe 3 weeks. It started little, but now it's big and scary." Emma cradled her right hand against her chest, protecting it instinctively. Mrs. Patterson felt her heart sink. She had worked for wealthy families long enough to recognize the signs of a child who had learned not to interrupt, not to complain, not to need too much attention. Emma had been suffering in silence, trying to be the perfect, undemanding daughter her grieving father needed her to be. "Emma, we need to tell your father about this right away," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "But he's in his important meeting," Emma protested. "He said I shouldn't bother him unless it's an emergency." "Sweetheart, this is an emergency." Mrs. Patterson took Emma's good hand and led her down the long hallway toward Marcus's office. She could hear his voice through the heavy oak door, discussing profit margins and market projections with the controlled intensity that had made him one of the youngest CEOs in the tech industry. She knocked firmly on the door, and Marcus's voice called out with barely concealed irritation. "Not now, Mrs. Patterson. We're in the middle of—" Mrs. Patterson opened the door anyway. "Mr. Wellington, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Emma needs you. It's urgent." Marcus looked up from his conference table, where 3 executives in expensive suits sat with laptops and thick folders. His first instinct was annoyance at the interruption, but when he saw Emma's tear-streaked face and the way she was holding her hand against her chest, everything else fell away. "Gentlemen, we'll have to continue this later," Marcus said, standing so quickly that his chair rolled back and hit the wall. "Marcus, we really need to finish these projections before—" one of the executives began. "Get out!" Marcus shouted, his voice echoing through the office with a force that made everyone, including Emma, jump. "All of you, get out now!" The executives gathered their materials and filed out quickly, clearly startled by Marcus's sudden transformation from controlled businessman to fierce, protective father. As soon as the door closed, Marcus was on his knees in front of Emma, his hands hovering near her but afraid to touch her in case he caused more pain. "Emma, baby, what's wrong? What happened to your hand?" "It hurts so much, Daddy," Emma sobbed, all of her careful composure crumbling now that her father was finally looking at her, really seeing her. "It hurts all the time, and I tried not to bother you because you're always so busy with important things, but I can't make it stop hurting." Marcus felt something break inside his chest, a wall he had built around his heart to protect himself from feeling too much, from being too present in a world that had already taken so much from him. "Oh, Emma, oh, sweetheart, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want to interrupt your meetings," Emma whispered. "I know your work is very important." Marcus pulled his daughter into his arms, holding her carefully against his chest as she cried. "Emma, listen to me. Nothing is more important than you. Not any meeting, not any business deal, not anything in the world." 3 hours later, they sat in the pediatric wing of St. Mary's Hospital while Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a specialist in pediatric orthopedics, examined Emma's hand with gentle precision. The X-rays had revealed a stress fracture in Emma's right hand, likely caused by repetitive strain and made worse by her attempts to continue using it despite the pain. "How long has she been experiencing discomfort?" Dr. Mitchell asked, wrapping Emma's hand in a soft cast decorated with cartoon butterflies. 3 weeks, Marcus said quietly, the guilt evident in his voice. "Maybe longer. I wasn't paying attention." Dr. Mitchell looked at him with understanding rather than judgment. Children are remarkably good at adapting to pain, especially when they sense that the adults around them are dealing with stress. Emma was trying to protect you by not complaining. As they drove home, Emma's hand secure in its colorful cast, she looked over at her father with eyes that seemed older than her 7 years. "Daddy, are you mad at me for interrupting your meeting?" Marcus pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face his daughter. "Emma, I need you to understand something very important. From now on, if you're hurt, if you're scared, if you need anything at all, you interrupt whatever I'm doing. You are the most important thing in my life, and I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't." That evening, Marcus canceled all of his remaining meetings for the week. He helped Emma set up her coloring supplies at the kitchen table, where they could work side by side, she with her left hand learning to guide the crayons, and he with his laptop, managing his business empire from a place where he could see his daughter's face and hear her voice whenever she needed him. The butterfly in Emma's coloring book remained unfinished, its purple wings still rough and shaky from that afternoon when the pain had finally become too much to hide. But beside it, Marcus had started his own drawing, a simple house with 2 stick figures standing in front of it, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Sometimes the most important business of the day wasn't conducted in boardrooms or conference calls. Sometimes it happened at kitchen tables where fathers learned that success meant nothing if you weren't present for the small, quiet moments when your child needed you most.